Imagine gold-plated mansions, private zoos and wild parties, while just outside entire cities trembled under the shadow of a ruthless empire. Step inside the forbidden world where billion-dollar deals were made in blood, and one man's name struck terror across continents. This is not just the story of Pablo Escobar, it's a descent into the heart of darkness, where unimaginable luxury and power were bought at the price of thousands of lives. Are you ready to uncover the secrets buried with Escobar's billions and witness the chilling true cost of his reign? Hit subscribe, turn on notifications and join the inner circle, because what you're about to see few have ever dared to imagine. The legend, the terror, the empire. It all starts now. This is the story of a man who made $60 million every day, who owned hippos that still terrorize Colombia 30 years after his death, who built his own prison complete with a nightclub, waterfall and 5-star amenities, then escaped when he got bored. But here's the part that will blow your mind. Despite controlling 80% of the world's cocaine supply and earning more money in a single week than most countries generate in a year, Pablo Escobar died as a hunted fugitive on a rooftop, proving that all the money in the world can't buy safety when you've made enemies of entire nations. You're about to enter the mind of a man who became richer than entire nations, controlled global drug markets and died with 30 billion reasons to live. This isn't just another crime story, this is the untold truth about power, money and the ultimate price of criminal empire. Lock your door, turn off distractions, because once you discover these secrets you'll never look at wealth, power or crime the same way again. Born in 1949 in Rio Negro, a forgotten Colombian town where dreams died young, Pablo Emilio Escobar Gaviria entered a world that offered him nothing. His father scratched survival from barren soil as a farmer. His mother taught children who had no future in a one-room schoolhouse. Poverty suffocated hope like smoke in a closed room, and most kids accepted their fate without question. But Pablo's eyes burned differently. While other teenagers accepted the limited prospects their hometown offered, he studied the rich families in Medellin like a predator stalking prey. He watched how money moved, how power talked, how fear commanded respect. This wasn't idle curiosity. This was a masterclass in manipulation that would later help him control governments and terrorize nations. By 15, Pablo had chosen crime as his route to wealth and power. He started with petty theft, stealing cars and selling contraband cigarettes on the streets of Medellin. But even these early crimes revealed something chilling about his character. He wasn't just another desperate kid looking for quick money. He was a calculating strategist who saw crime as a business opportunity with unlimited growth potential. His criminal resume reads like a horror story: car theft, kidnapping wealthy individuals for ransom, even grave robbing, stealing tombstones to resell them to grieving families. These weren't random acts of desperation. They were calculated steps in a master plan that would eventually reshape the global drug trade and challenge the authority of entire governments. The turning point came in the early 1970s, when Pablo discovered the incredible profit potential of cocaine. While other criminals in Colombia were focused on emerald smuggling or marijuana trafficking, Pablo recognized that cocaine represented something entirely different. This white powder cost almost nothing to produce but could be sold for enormous profits in the United States. Americans had an insatiable appetite for cocaine, and Pablo was perfectly positioned to supply that demand. This wasn't just criminal opportunism. Pablo understood market forces, supply chains, and customer demand better than most legitimate businessmen. He saw the future written in American addiction and positioned himself to become their dealer. In 1975, Pablo formed the Medellin Cartel, bringing together other ambitious criminals who shared his vision of turning drug trafficking into a sophisticated international business. Unlike other drug organizations that operated as loose confederations, Pablo created a vertical monopoly. He controlled every aspect of the cocaine trade, from the coca farms in the Colombian countryside to the distribution networks in American cities. His organization wasn't just a criminal gang, it was a multinational corporation that happened to deal in illegal substances. Pablo employed thousands of people in roles ranging from coca farmers to chemists, from pilots to accountants, from bodyguards to lawyers. This was corporate structure applied to criminal enterprise on a scale never seen before. By the early 1980s, Pablo's empire had reached staggering proportions that defy comprehension. He controlled an estimated 80% of the world's cocaine supply, a monopoly that any legitimate businessman would envy. The numbers from this period sound like fantasy, but they're documented reality. $420 million every single week. That's $60 million flowing into Pablo's accounts every day, more money than most people see in 10 lifetimes. His weekly income exceeded the entire annual budget of small countries. To put this in perspective, Pablo was making more money than the gross domestic product of many nations. Forbes magazine struggled to calculate his wealth properly. At his peak, they estimated his net worth at $30 billion, making him one of the richest men in the world. But here's what made Pablo's wealth different from other billionaires: his money was entirely liquid. While other wealthy individuals had their fortunes tied up in stocks, real estate and investments, Pablo's wealth was pure cash, stored in warehouses like grain silos. The logistics of this wealth defied reality and common sense. Pablo employed armies of people whose only job was counting money. Industrial money-counting machines ran 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, and still couldn't keep pace with the tsunami of cash flooding in. These machines, designed for banks and casinos, were overwhelmed by the sheer volume of currency Pablo's organization generated: $2,500 monthly for rubber bands. Let that sink in. Pablo's organization spent more on organizing money than most families earn in a month. They needed industrial quantities of rubber bands just to keep their cash organized into manageable bundles. This detail alone reveals the incomprehensible scale of Pablo's wealth. But here's the detail that will haunt your dreams. Pablo lost $2.1 billion every year to what his organization called shrinkage. This wasn't theft by employees or seizures by law enforcement. This was money that was literally eaten by rats, destroyed by water damage, or lost when hiding places were forgotten. Imagine losing over $2 billion annually, and considering it just the cost of doing business. Pablo's accountants kept meticulous records of these losses. Rats chewed through bundles of hundreds. Rain destroyed warehouses full of currency. Employees forgot where millions were buried in remote locations. Currency rotted in underground storage facilities. $2 billion, vanishing into thin air every year, and Pablo shrugged it off like pocket change because his income was so enormous that even losing billions still left him with more money than he could spend. The scale of Pablo's transportation network rivaled legitimate shipping companies. He owned fleets of aircraft, including jets, helicopters, and small planes, that could land on remote airstrips carved out of jungle. His organization operated custom-built submarines that slithered through Caribbean waters, avoiding detection by Coast Guard patrols. Speedboats carved through midnight waves while authorities slept. Pablo didn't just smuggle cocaine. He created an invisible highway that stretched from Colombian jungles to American cities. His organization had aircraft maintenance facilities, fuel depots, and communication networks that would make commercial airlines envious. This wasn't amateur-hour drug running. This was sophisticated logistics on a scale that challenged government capabilities. But the most shocking manifestation of Pablo's wealth was his lifestyle, which redefined luxury and excess in ways that seem almost fictional. His primary residence, Hacienda Nápoles, wasn't just a house. It was a 7,000-acre kingdom that cost $63 million to build and maintain. This private estate featured 27 artificial lakes that reflected the Colombian sun like mirrors, a private bullfighting ring for entertainment, and a go-kart track for family fun. The crown jewel of Hacienda Nápoles was Pablo's private zoo, which housed animals worth more than most people's houses: hippos, elephants, giraffes, zebras, and hundreds of other exotic animals imported from around the world roamed the estate. Pablo fed these animals better than Colombian children ate, and loved them more than human lives. The irony was staggering. A man who murdered thousands showed genuine affection for imported wildlife. Inside the main residence, luxury penetrated every corner of existence. Gold-plated bathroom fixtures caught morning light like captured sunbeams. Diamond-encrusted pistols turned murder weapons into jewelry. Vintage car collections filled garages larger than most homes, showcasing automobiles that would make museum curators weep with envy. Pablo's garage housed more wealth than entire city budgets, but perhaps the most remarkable display of Pablo's power and wealth was La Catedral, the prison he built for himself when government pressure became too intense. Calling La Catedral a prison is misleading because it was actually more luxurious than most five-star hotels. The facility featured a nightclub that pulsed with music behind bars, a spa that offered massages between murders, and a waterfall that cascaded through corridors where other men would find concrete walls and steel bars. Pablo didn't just serve time in La Catedral, he held business meetings there, entertained guests like a hotel owner, and continued orchestrating his empire from his luxury cell. He had essentially negotiated his own imprisonment on his own terms, in a facility of his own design, with amenities that most free people could never afford. He transformed punishment into pleasure, turned prison into paradise, and proved that with enough money, even justice could be purchased and remodeled. But this paradise was built on graveyards, and Pablo's business model required constant feeding with human blood. His philosophy was brutally simple: plata o plomo, silver or lead. Accept his money or accept his bullets. No negotiations, no second chances, no mercy for those who chose wrong. Pablo maintained a private army of over 3,000 sicarios, professional killers, who treated assassination like accounting. These weren't street criminals or desperate individuals. Many were trained professionals who viewed murder as a career with performance reviews and promotion opportunities. Pablo paid them salaries that exceeded legitimate careers, equipped them with military-grade weapons, and rewarded loyalty with bonuses that bought houses. The violence Pablo orchestrated wasn't random street crime, it was systematic terrorism designed to bend nations to his will. Conservative estimates suggest his organization was directly responsible for over 4,000 deaths, but the actual number was likely much higher when considering the broader impact of the drug war his empire fueled. Some of Pablo's most shocking acts of violence were designed to send messages that would terrify anyone who might consider opposing him. In 1989, Avianca Flight 203 exploded in Colombian skies, killing all 107 passengers including 2 Americans. Pablo's target was one politician who wasn't even aboard the flight. He murdered over 100 innocent people just to ensure one enemy died, turning mass murder into a margin of error calculation. The Palace of Justice siege in 1985 redefined governmental terror. Pablo's forces attacked Colombia's Supreme Court, killing 11 justices and hundreds of others. His goal was destroying extradition paperwork that could send him to American prisons, but the operation became a massacre that shocked the world and demonstrated Pablo's willingness to torch democratic institutions to protect his interests. Yet Pablo understood that fear alone couldn't sustain power. He needed love, loyalty, and public support to maintain his empire. In Medellin's poorest neighborhoods, Pablo became Robin Hood reborn. He built housing projects that governments promised but never delivered. Soccer fields materialized where children had only streets to play. Schools rose from empty lots, providing education where politicians offered only excuses. Pablo's social programs weren't charity. They were calculated investments in public support that paid enormous dividends. While government officials made speeches, Pablo made tangible differences in desperate lives. Families received money for food, medical care, and hope. Poor communities saw Pablo as their savior while the world saw him as their devil. This strategy proved remarkably effective when Pablo entered politics in 1982, winning election to Colombia's Congress as an alternate representative. Parliamentary immunity protected him from prosecution, while he advocated against extradition treaties. Pablo understood that political power was the ultimate insurance policy for criminal empires. But politics couldn't contain Pablo's ambitions or crimes. International pressure forced his expulsion from Congress, transforming him from politician to fugitive overnight. His billions became both shield and target, protecting him from immediate capture while making him the most wanted man on earth. The manhunt that followed consumed resources like a small war. Colombia's search bloc dedicated their existence to one mission: find Pablo Escobar, alive or dead. The United States provided intelligence, technology, and funding, recognizing that Pablo represented a threat to national security itself. This wasn't just local law enforcement chasing a criminal. This was an international military operation designed to eliminate a man who had challenged the authority of governments. Pablo's wealth bought him advantages that seemed insurmountable. Corrupt officials sold information about government operations. Networks of safe houses provided constantly changing hideouts. Advanced communication equipment allowed coordination while maintaining mobility. Pablo had billions to spend on staying free, and he spent them like water. But money couldn't buy him the one thing he needed most: human connection. Despite unlimited resources and sophisticated security, Pablo remained fundamentally human. He called his family regularly, held meetings with trusted associates, and tried maintaining personal relationships, even while being hunted by thousands of officers. Technology became Pablo's executioner. Electronic surveillance tracked his communications like bloodhounds following scent trails. Every phone call potentially revealed his location. Every meeting risked exposure. As surveillance technology advanced in the early 1990s, Pablo's advantages eroded like sandcastles facing rising tides. The final months transformed the king into a beggar. Instead of golden palaces with exotic animals, Pablo hid in cramped apartments and forgotten buildings. His billion-dollar empire crumbled as associates died or fled. Assets were seized, operations disrupted, and power dissolved like sugar in rain. December 20, 1993. After 16 months as a fugitive, constantly moving between hiding places and trying to stay ahead of the search block, Pablo's extraordinary life ended where it began, in the city that made him rich and watched him die. Official reports claim he died fighting police. Evidence suggests he may have chosen suicide over capture and extradition. Either way, the man who controlled 80% of global cocaine supply died with a handful of bodyguards, far from his hippos and gold fixtures. The immediate aftermath revealed Pablo's paradoxical impact on Colombia and the world. In Medellin's wealthy neighborhoods, thousands celebrated in the streets, finally free from the fear that had dominated their lives for years. But in some of the poorest communities, people mourned the death of someone they saw as their protector and benefactor. Pablo was simultaneously terrorist and philanthropist, brutal criminal and folk hero, proof that human nature defies simple categories. The search for Pablo's hidden wealth began immediately after his death, and continues today. Despite his enormous fortune, most remains undiscovered. Billions of dollars are still hidden in secret locations across Colombia and other countries, buried in fields, stored in remote warehouses, or converted to assets authorities never identified.
This lost treasure has inspired countless hunters and added mystique to Pablo's legend. Pablo's environmental legacy literally roams Colombian countryside today. The hippos from his private zoo, abandoned after his death, have reproduced and spread throughout local ecosystems. Over 100 hippos descended from Pablo's animals now compete with native species, creating ecological problems that make his impact visible decades later. Scientists consider them an invasive species that poses significant environmental threats, making Pablo's legacy literally alive in the landscape. His family faced enormous challenges after his death. His wife and children were forced to flee Colombia, seeking asylum in various countries while trying to build new lives away from the violence and notoriety associated with the Escobar name. His son changed his name to Sebastián Marroquín, became an architect, and publicly denounced his father's crimes while promoting peace. His daughter lives privately, dealing with psychological trauma from growing up as history's most notorious criminal's child. Pablo's story has become a cultural phenomenon through Netflix's Narcos and countless books, documentaries, and movies. Tourism related to his life generates significant revenue for Colombia, with visitors flocking to see Hacienda Nápoles, now converted into a theme park and memorial that attempts to educate while commemorating. Modern Colombia has worked tirelessly to move beyond the Pablo Escobar era. Cities like Medellín have transformed from symbols of drug violence into centers of innovation and culture. This transformation required enormous sacrifice from Colombians who refused to let their country's future be defined by its criminal past. Yet the drug trade persists. While no individual has achieved Pablo's level of power and wealth, criminal organizations continue profiting from international drug demand. The economic incentives that drove Pablo's empire remain unchanged, ensuring new criminals will attempt following his blood-soaked footsteps. Pablo Escobar's life proves that criminal success ultimately defeats itself. Despite accumulating unimaginable wealth, wielding government-challenging power, and living in unparalleled luxury, he died as a hunted fugitive, separated from family and constantly fearing for his life. His billions couldn't buy safety, his power couldn't provide protection, and his empire couldn't survive his death. The man who controlled 80% of global cocaine supply, spent $2,500 monthly on rubber bands, and lost $2 billion annually to rats and rain, died on a rooftop with minimal protection, far from his golden palaces and exotic animals. Pablo's story isn't about wealth or power. It's about the human cost of criminal empire and the ultimate emptiness of success built on violence and suffering. Explosive CTA. You've just witnessed the rise and fall of the most powerful criminal empire in history. A man who made more money in a week than most countries generate in a year, who lost billions to rats and weather, who built a luxury prison with a nightclub and waterfall, who died hunted like an animal despite having 30 billion reasons to live. But this is just the beginning of the dark truths hidden behind wealth and power. Hit that like button if these shocking revelations opened your eyes to the reality of criminal empires. Your engagement tells YouTube to share these explosive stories with others who deserve to know the truth. Drop a comment and tell me which detail made your jaw drop. Was it the $2 billion lost to rats, the monthly rubber band budget, the hippos that still terrorize Colombia? Your comments drive me to uncover more stories they don't want you to know. Smash that subscribe button and ring the notification bell right now. I'm bringing you the most explosive hidden stories that expose the dark reality behind power and wealth. Stories so shocking they'll change how you see the world forever. Next week, I'm revealing the tech billionaire whose empire is built on stolen technology and a man who disappeared in 19... The week after that, the government operation that traded weapons for drugs and tried to bury the evidence forever. These aren't just stories, they're warnings. They're the truth behind the lies you've been fed your entire life. Don't let these revelations disappear into the algorithm. Subscribe now, turn on notifications, and join thousands of truth seekers who refuse to accept comfortable lies over uncomfortable truths. The secrets are waiting. The truth is here, and you have the power to spread what they've tried to hide. Subscribe now. The revolution starts with you.